you got to say, look, that was amazing. This is somebody who has got our back, who's been there the whole time. And just because it just come across the wire earlier today, if I can get my phone to work again, Congresswoman Fletcher and Congressman Val Demings, if you have not heard, just introduced legislation today to extend to permanent status the authorization for FirstNet. That's huge. Remember, we had a 10-year window to start, and we still got a little bit of time here, or 15 or whatever it was, I guess. But it works. What you guys have done has worked. It's deserving of reauthorization, and there's a bill out there. So when you hear the chairwoman say, look, it's all about advocacy, it's all about speaking your mind and taking a stand, now's the time to start doing that. You ask what we can do to help, that's what we can do to help. We'll talk about that in the future, but that's big news today. We heard about 911, Next-Gen 911, we heard about reauthorization. Those are all huge things. So we are pretty much right on time. So what I'd like to do at this point is call up our next panel. And the title of this panel is going to be Delivering on FirstNet's Promise to Public Safety. And this is Ed Parkinson's panel, so thank you, Ed. Yeah, there you go. Sure, why not? Please. And also like to introduce certainly the FirstNet Authority Vice Chair and Chair of the Southern Platte Fire District in Kansas City, Missouri, Rich Carrizzo, who you may have met, and then Mayor Stephen Benjamin, who is the current FirstNet Chair President. We appreciate your service, sir, and your service as mayor in Charleston, South Carolina.
Columbia.
My bad.
It's all good. It's all good. The title of the session is Never to Follow, Chairwoman Jessica Rosenworcel.
Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Chairman, how are you, brother?
And then I'm going to turn over to Ed here briefly, but again, I mentioned it before. There are a lot of folks that deserve credit. None more he's no longer a young man, but he was a young man back then. He looks young, but he was a guy who got it right away, somebody who'd never worn a uniform, but clearly understood where we were coming. So with Ed, with our thanks, I'm going to turn the panel over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Good to see everyone. To echo the mayor, you don't want to follow that, do you? And you got a nice promotion there, Chris gave you, president. No, so that's a good start. But it's terrific to see everyone here today. Thank you, first of all, for being here. Everyone is busy. Everyone has things going on, but I really just appreciate all of you taking your time, having traveled in. It's so good to see so many men and women in uniform. Thank you so much to all the public safety users here today. There are a few other quick shout-outs we've had today. The FirstNet board, who's in presence today. I see Karima. We've got Sheriff Peter Katusian over there, my esteemed panelists. Obviously, we've got former board members too. I'll come to in a moment. We've got Paul Patrick here, in from Utah. Paul, always a pleasure, sir. Karima, again, thanks for everything you're doing too. Former board members, we've got Chuck Dowd, we've got Jeff Johnson, we've got Kevin McGinnis as well, and then Tim Bryan, who just asked a question previously to the chair. And we've got the AT&T team here in the presence today, but especially for me, I'd like to welcome and acknowledge all the FirstNet Authority team members who are here today. It's terrific to see all of you, and the FirstNet Authority, really those unsung heroes behind the scenes who keep advocating for public safety no matter what, and to see all of you here today is fantastic. Morgan O'Brien received a shout out again, but Morgan, again, I mean the PSST, that was where the idea started. And then I'd be remiss without specifically mention by name Harlan McEwen, who really, when it comes to all things communications and public safety, there's no one in the United States history who's done more for public safety communications than Harlan. So Harlan, thank you very much for it. We've gone through the history. We've had a great time going down memory lane a little bit, and we're going to shift gears somewhat here with our current chair, Steve Benjamin, and Chief Rich Carrizzo. I'll just dive straight in. I think, Mayor, with you, if we'll start. I want, if you don't mind, could you just, this might be a good opportunity. You've had a couple of board meetings now, but this is your first sort of in-person with a larger group. Tell us a little bit more about your background and what drew you to the FirstNet program.
No, this is like teaching my class when you walk into a room and everyone in the room knows more about what you're talking about than you do. That's always an interesting challenge. Really excited to be here. I mean, what an auspicious occasion. It's good to see you, Ms. McEwen. I mean, having the opportunity the last several months to read about so many of you in this room, and now to be honored with the opportunity to actually be with you face to face, mask to mask in our nation's capital. I was privileged, obviously, long before serving a decade as mayor of Columbia. My wife wishes I was mayor of Charleston, okay? Whole nother story, whole nother story. Her mother's hometown. To serve as the chief of our state's second largest law enforcement agency, and our former governor, Jim Hodges, 650 sworn, 950 employees, and to be introduced for the very first time as a very young man to the role and responsibilities and the sacred obligation of men and women who run towards danger when everyone else is running in the other direction. I remember my very first warrant service out in the middle of the night with the men and women who were trying to take some pretty dangerous characters off the street, and developing a deep appreciation that stayed with me until I left the agency literally 10 days before 9/11, embarking upon my very first political endeavor to become Attorney General of South Carolina. I came in second in that job, in that race, but never lost a passion and a love and respect for men and women who wore the badge. I'm fortunate enough to have the opportunity to serve the city that I love in 2010, and we spent over a decade investing heavily in 21st century policing, increased our police department budget by over 90% over the course of that time, investing in making sure that the men and women in our police department had the resources they need, our fire department had the resources they need, our 911 and emergency comms folks had the resources they need, and understanding as we signed on as a FirstNet city, understanding that hard work, dedication will get you but so far. If we're not in the 21st century leveraging technology to make us all better, as General Powell would say, as a force multiplier, make us better at what we do, more responsive at what we do, then we would certainly be remiss in not achieving our goals. We were excited to sign on as a FirstNet city. It was 4 years after probably the most challenging natural disaster that we'd faced in our city, 2015. We were hit with a 1,000-year flood. And so many of you more and more regrettably are going through natural disasters and also man-made disasters. What happens when 12 trillion gallons of water falls on the Carolinas over a period of a couple of weeks? We had 45 dams fail, 541 roads damaged or closed, all within 24 hours. In one day alone, almost 7,000 911 calls and almost 3,000 requests for service, and we lost 19 precious lives. And to help us understand exactly what our heightened responsibility needed to be as we dealt with both man-made and natural disasters. As I stepped into this responsibility with the appointment of Secretary Raimondo, it really reminded me of probably the greatest lessons my grandmother and my dad taught me, my mama too, she'd be mad if I didn't say her, my mom too, over time. But you know, God gives you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. You're supposed to listen twice as much as you talk. And FirstNet, every single day, needs to continue to listen to first responders, listen to each and every one of you, and continue to work with our partners at AT&T to build a service that's bespoke for each and every one of you that makes your job better, makes your job easier, ensures that not only can you respond to the men and women that you sworn to protect, but that we do our duty to make sure that each and every one of you gets home safely every single day as well. It's an honor to be here with you, and I'm thankful to each and every one of you for your service. I will say this because I'm going to forget to say it at the end if I do not say it. 10 years is an auspicious occasion. I'm looking forward to 20 and 30. History will treat the men and women in this room well. So often now we have very short memories and we don't think about posterity. We should be thinking about it right now. The work that you've done to bring us to this point is a very big deal. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of the FirstNet Authority board, on behalf of our incredible staff, our amazing vice chairman who keeps me straight every single day and serves as my mentor on the board. Just thank you for all that you've done and all that we will continue to do as we stay on this mission, this journey together. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate the words there. I think it's also important, Secretary Raimondo, in the statute, the Secretary of Commerce appoints the board, and when she was the governor of Rhode Island, was a heavy FirstNet user, has been terrifically supportive of the program ever since she stepped into the role. So again, just from the authority's perspective, appreciate and welcome the support, certainly from the secretaries as well as NTIs and everyone else at the department. It's been a good shift. You know, Rich, the mayor talked a little bit about the evolution of, you know, how things have occurred for public safety. You're a fire chief. You've really seen a lot over the years. How have things changed with FirstNet? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure. Before I start, I want to thank everybody because I've heard this too. I want to thank all the past board members that are here today. I don't know if I realized how many were going to be here. Some I've never met, but I just want to thank you for laying this street and this highway for all us to stay within. And I just want to put that gratitude out and thank you very much first. Well, as I think about that, you know, the secretary, excuse me, not the secretary, the chairwoman had explained we just had 9/11. That was 20 years ago. Then we're here for 10 years ago for FirstNet. But I don't think what everybody's remembering is that this phone, FirstNet was really being introduced and signed before this phone was ever introduced. It's just, it isn't even at 10 years. It's coming up later on this year. So when we talk about applications, I don't think anybody thought applications like we think about applications today, especially in public safety and what we're expecting today and into the future. We were thinking of software issues and how the software would assist with our communications. Not that we'd be walking around with these and this would be FirstNet. Never. And so when we look at the evolution of it, and even I've always preached that it's going to take a generation to get rid of the blocks on the side of with their nice leather and their names written on it. It's going to take an evolution for people to just move to these. It just is. It's where we're at today. I'm sure most in the room remember. I see some younger faces too that probably don't, but we started with the squawk boxes and the old Plectron systems to get notified, and then we moved to the block pagers, and when they were voice activated, we hit a home run. And from where we're at today is just totally different. And as we move into mission critical data that comes in for us to make decisions on scenes, from law enforcement, from EMS side, from PD side, from emergency management. Here we're also putting them in bus drivers for schools. That's unheard of. That is public safety also, to take care of everybody in the United States.
It's so true, and you have to think a little bit about that's what we've seen in the past and what we have today. Where things are going to go in the future is tremendously exciting, because it's not so much about the work that we've done up to this point. It's about building it for the next step. And Steve, that might be a good question for you in terms of, you're the new board chair. You found your feet now in the program. Tell us a little bit about what you envisage for, maybe not so much the network, but where you hope that the program will go in the years to come.
Well, I think obviously event after event serves as an opportunity to learn how do we become more nimble, more flexible, more resilient, make sure our systems are more redundant and responsive to, I mean, some of the challenges we faced over the last year alone, I think begs reason for each and every one of us. I mean, it's just that much of a challenge. So how do we continue to invest, make strategic investments in the system, leveraging our partnership to make sure that our system is resilient and responsive to the needs of the men and women who use it every single day, to listen closely to the PSAC and all of our other partner organizations to make sure that we're building something that stands the test of time. I do want to dispute one comment made earlier. Someone said that firefighters were not good lobbyists. That's BS, okay? Firefighters, police officers, 911, if you want to get something done, you go to women and men who wear the badge. Folks who aren't doing it for personal gain or resources, but people who truly want to serve, you get it done. And I hope and pray everything starts with reauthorization. I think making sure we don't take our eyes off the ball and we walk before we run again is the key. But continue to build out a resilient, responsive network that meets the needs of urban, suburban, and rural communities is the key here. I mean, I think that's been key to the success, and we got to remain focused in that regard.
We saw that. Our board was actually out in New Mexico just a few weeks ago at our most recent board meeting. We had the privilege of visiting the Navajo Nation, which was quite remarkable to see how that community has really struggled to just get basic connectivity, and the progress we've seen with the deployment of FirstNet and the needs of public safety in those communities, how that too has changed and how that's evolved. And I think that rural piece that you mentioned is key. And we've had that with Tim Bryan. I mentioned he was here earlier. The focus on the rural mandates that Congress put into our legislation, all of these things show the emphasis is not just about what we need to do in urban and metropolitan areas, but very much so in where things are occurring in the rural parts of the community. And that comes really back to the growth of the marketplace, Rich. You know, we've seen the numbers, we've seen how this has evolved. Talk to us a little bit about how you've seen the market, how public safety has leveraged the technology from your perspective.
I'm going to go right back to apps real quick. So with 190 apps out there, you have these people sitting around. Well, I guess the firefighters sit around more than the cops. The cops will tell you they work harder, but I don't really believe it's so. But mainly the firefighters are coming up with all these new apps and sending them off, making sure that they work. That's how this is going to change and develop, is the younger crowd developing these applications of how we can use them in public safety to protect our communities better. I mean, it's that simple. We continue to see the natural disasters, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the flooding, the snowstorms. Who would have thought we'd be digging out generators a long time ago? It's happening. It's here. You don't hear anybody talking about the fires or the hostage situations anymore. It's all the natural disasters that we're dealing with on a continuous basis. We hear from AT&T at our board of how often our deployable program goes out, and how that partnership is just an incredible partnership. Of one of the things that was promised a long time ago when this started was how the partnership is developed and how we help public safety. The deployables is one of our primary and best advocates for FirstNet completely. Our new compact rapid deployable. Thank you very much. Wonderful. I was very fortunate to see that during a tour and just amazed, and that was when we started buying these. That's another avenue. If you think about how COVID, I know we're going to talk about a little bit about COVID a little bit later with another panel, so I won't steal much of their thunder, but just to see what happened through COVID and how these deployables were set up to help systems and communities come together to get people tested, to get them through life. And then if you move on to Karima's area of 911, who would have thought a 911 operator could sit at home and do their job? Never would I have thought that my entire career we could have done that. But we did it, and still doing it today. That's progress. That's what public safety wants to hear and see. Moving on to the Z-axis. I mean, we could go on all day of where we can take a building and know exactly where a first responder is in that building on the height side. We knew longitude and latitude, but we didn't know height. Now we have the height ability. It just continues on and on. I could sit here, I'll keep going, but I'm not. I know we're tight for time.
No, we actually made a believer of Ed Horowitz, our former board chair, about working from home pre-pandemic. He absolutely refused the idea of working from home. Now even someone like Ed believes it. So shout out to Ed. And I just want to give credit. I think Fred Scalera from the AT&T ROG team. You know, this is a gentleman who we got to know when he was a single point of contact out in the state of New Jersey. He was doing a hell of a lot of work. He's now with the AT&T team. But what that ROG team does is nothing short of remarkable. It's now ROG has been integrated into the way that public safety thinks about responses. Our PSAC chair, Chris Lombard, is here. When I was in Seattle a few weeks ago, we talked about the response on how those assets, those deployable assets, are leveraged not only by Seattle PD but others, and it's really, really important. And I think, Mayor Benjamin, this is what you were saying, the feedback of public safety. That's that ongoing. It's integral to everything we have to do in order to advance the network.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not only Ed. My dad, who's a big knuckle contractor, still does not believe you can work from home and work. That's a whole nother story. Yes, we've got to make sure that every single day we're listening to public safety. Every single day we're listening to men and women who are working their tails off to make sure our communities remain safe. If you're going to build a great city, a strong city, a great community, quite frankly, you have to have a safe community first before it is a predicate to prosperity all day long. And it's so interesting now. This has been a bit of a learning curve for me. I've served as president of the United States Conference of Mayors, president of the African American Mayors Association, former vice chair of the Global Parliament of Mayors. My 14-year-old says, "Dad, next to Galaxy," whatever happens to be. But the learning curve of understanding the needs of suburban communities and again rural communities that much more. I've always thought, although my focus has been on the metropolitan areas, the dense areas that we live in, many of us in here live in every single day. I always thought it was wrong, fundamentally wrong, that people would have to leave the communities in which they were born, raised, that share their culture every single day, to go to the cities just in search of economic opportunity. We are now at a point where leveraging technology, working closely with each and every one of you, where we can use this wonderful bipartisan support and investment in building out robust communities that allow people to be safe and connected in their own communities. But we can only build that, again, in a truly bespoke manner if, in fact, we're listening every single day. So I just want to encourage you that we have, I'm so impressed with the men and women I serve with on the FirstNet Authority board, and some of our former members who speak to us fairly regularly. Thank you.
Whether we want to hear or not.
Hey. Technology connects you. Thank you, Jeff and Sue in particular. It's been a wonderful learning experience. And again, I just think that when you're constantly listening and you have the attitude of that the chairwoman spoke of earlier, that you got to be an optimist. And in reality, in my faith tradition, the glass it ain't half empty, it ain't half full. My cup runneth over. We are in a wonderful position to get better together if, in fact, we constantly communicate. This process is innovative, it's iterative. We'll figure some stuff out, we'll drop the ball sometimes, we'll pick it back up, we'll work together. But the world in which we're living right now, where technological innovation is just amazingly fast. I mean, we're talking about AI, advanced machine learning, automation, just changing every single day. I mean, I think we're going to look at, just as Rich just mentioned, 10 years from now, we're going to be looking at the innovations now as if we were really just scratching the surface. We have to constantly learn together, and you learn again by listening more than you talk. We are all ears for men and women in public safety. So thank you for your continued advice and counsel.
I've already learned and adopted you listen twice more than you speak at my home. I'm sure everyone in this room will be shocked that my 5-year-old daughter completely dispels that theory, but I'm still trying, so it worked. You know, the expression, if it wasn't for a deadline, nothing would get done. I think, you know, Chair Rosenwasser was talking a little bit about that as it relates to all the other areas that public safety is focused on in 2022. But in terms of where we are with the future needs and where you see needs going, Rich, I'd be fascinated in your perspective. And where do you see things going, and how do you expect the authority maybe to play a role in that?
Well, as Steve said, and I appreciate everything, especially about his 2 years too, because I had never heard that either till he said that very vocally at a board meeting.
If you hang with my grandmother, we'd have a problem. Right?
No, right. So it is about listening, though. It starts with public safety, and it's, you know, we've always preached that this is a network for public safety, built by public safety, period. And the only way to do that is to continue to listen to public safety on a daily basis, and that's through FirstNet's engagements, that's through our partnership with AT&T and explaining what we're hearing on the field, what they're hearing in the field, and how to move that forward. It goes with our engagement team. It starts with our PSAC. And somebody correct me, but is every chair of the PSAC here today, I believe? With Harlan,
Wow.
Paul, Todd, and now Chief Lombard. So I'm glad you're all here, and that's where it starts, with the PSAC. That's why the PSAC was developed, was for all those associations to bring back to the board to help make decisions. And then from that, to develop our roadmap, figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to spend that $18 billion over the 25 years in the proper investments and move that forward to make this the best public safety broadband network.
It's exactly right, and what's going to be fascinating too is, as many of you know, with the 10th anniversary, the GAO just filed their report to Congress. That's going to be out publicly later on this afternoon, and in there's talk about the emphasis on the PSAC, and this is something that we've really tried to make a big emphasis, and we've spoken about this in the last 6 or so months since Mayor Benjamin came on board. The PSAC is the front and center of the lifeblood of the voice of public safety, continually being integrated into the FirstNet. It's something that's not going away. It's something we're going to double down on in the weeks and months to come.
And so something I just, sorry.
Okay, good, please.
The only thing I wanted to add was, and we need to continue to work with our local people, our state, and our federal. I mean, this is where that all started. We can't just stick with public safety. We need to listen to all the communities.
And maybe just one point I want to make too, because oftentimes, especially when you get to the Washington, numbers get really big, and sometimes really big numbers seem really big. And the reality is that every single day we're dealing with finite resources. Finite resources. Hopefully, we'll have more resources. I was elected 3 times in Columbia, and I think the main reason was I thought I did a pretty good job, but I never raised taxes. We finished 9 out of 12 years with a budget surplus, but we continue to invest very wisely in building a strong and a healthy city. Whether you're talking about $7 billion or $18 billion or whatever numbers we're talking about, there's a limited amount of resources available to us right now. So we have to, again, be very strategic in how we deploy those resources. We can only be strategic if in deploying those resources if we're fully informed and we're constantly dialoguing. Again, and that's something I'm learning every single day as I sit on the authority board. So again, I just want to use this as maybe the 10th opportunity to encourage each and every one of you to continue to pour into us to make sure that we're doing a good job on your behalf with the resources of the people of the greatest country in the history of the world.
Tough to wrap it up on something like that, but it's true. And the work that it takes a small group of people to change the world. And you just look at those of us in the room who've been fortunate enough to have touched this program. You talk about those who unfortunately aren't here today. There's a couple of my predecessors, Bill D'Agostino, TJ Kennedy, Mike Poth, who had the pleasure of working with all 3 of them as they ran this program. I'm fortunate to be here, whoever will follow us in the future. You said it, history will be kind to those in this room. And to have played just a small part of it, it's a privilege of a lifetime. And I really do appreciate that. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I think I'm good. Keep on time.
2 most powerful words in the English language are thank you.
Yes.
Thank you to all
enough.
of you for your work. God bless you.
Thank you.
Very nice job. Thank you. Appreciate it.